What if I told you that King Charles, the man known for his restraint, his careful diplomacy, and his relentless efforts to keep the royal family above scandal, has finally said, enough? What if I told you that behind palace gates, papers have already been drawn, signatures collected, and that Meghan Markle may actually face legal consequences not in the realm of gossip, but in a real court of law? Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. You've heard the whispers, the passive-aggressive headlines, the thinly veiled royal statements. But this time, there's no subtlety, no more silent treatment, no more palace sources close to the king watering down the truth. Because now, it's official. King Charles is taking legal action. And at the center of this unfolding storm, Meghan Markle, the Duchess who walked away from the crown but kept using its power. It didn't start this way. It never does. At first, it was a series of well-timed interviews. A Netflix documentary here, a podcast episode there. Subtle jabs, casual digs, and carefully curated anecdotes that painted the royal family as cold, calculating, and even cruel. The world watched as Meghan spun her narrative. Some believed it. Others rolled their eyes. But the monarchy? It stayed silent. Until now. Because somewhere along the way, the line was crossed. And that line wasn't about royal drama. It wasn't about family feuds. It was about something far more serious. Misrepresentation, misuse of royal titles, and alleged financial impropriety tied to the monarchy itself. Yes, we're talking about money. About charities. About documents. And more than anything, we're talking about what happens when someone allegedly weaponizes their royal status for personal gain. After leaving the royal family behind, the details are still unraveling. Sources close to Clarence's house have confirmed that lawyers are involved. Serious ones. The kind that don't get called in for PR cleanups, but for legal battles that can end in jail time. And reportedly, King Charles has already signed off on the first formal steps. Why now? Why take action after so many years of back and forth? Because this isn't just about Meghan anymore. This is about the monarchy's survival. About legacy. About law. About the millions raised and spent, the titles used and abused, and the reputations left shattered. And yes, this is about an explosive file marked MM/sovereign concern that was allegedly delivered to the king's private counsel just days before his latest public appearance. But before we go there, let's ask this. Can a monarch really have his daughter-in-law jailed? Or is this simply a masterful game of royal chess, with Meghan as the final piece on the board? What's inside that file? What actions have already been taken behind the scenes? And what happens if Meghan refuses to comply? What makes a monarch snap? It wasn't one single headline. It wasn't the Netflix docuseries. It wasn't even the Oprah interview, though that one came close. It was something smaller, quieter, easier to miss, unless you were paying attention. It began with a letter, a legal notice, tucked discreetly into the king's daily dispatch. Inside, a flagged report from a royal auditor, citing unauthorized use of royal branding tied to a charity appearance Meghan Markle had recently made in California. At first glance, it looked like any other celebrity PR move. But the problem? Meghan had referred to herself, on an official fundraising platform, as Her Royal Highness, the Duchess of Sussex. Only she isn't allowed to. Not anymore. Remember, when Meghan and Harry stepped down as senior royals, they agreed to stop using HRH and to avoid any branding that might imply official royal endorsement. That was the deal. That was the line. And now, it was crossed. King Charles reportedly held the letter in silence for several minutes. No aides, no advisors, just him, alone, staring at the name Meghan Markle on the page. And then, he whispered something no one expected. She's forcing my hand. You see, Charles has spent his entire reign trying to be the unifier, the bridge builder. Even after all the chaos, he refused to take legal action, refused to strike back. But this was different. It wasn't just a headline. It was a legal liability. Because if the monarchy knows someone is misusing titles and doesn't act, that makes them complicit. And that's where Prince William comes in. According to sources close to the family, William had warned his father for months. She's pushing the limits, he reportedly said. The more we ignore it, the more damage she does. But it wasn't until this latest infraction, buried deep in a charity ledger, that Charles finally agreed. Enough was enough. He picked up the phone. Not to Meghan, not to Harry, but to the Privy Council. That's the royal body with the authority to advise on matters of title, law, and, if necessary, enforcement. Within hours, King Charles had requested a private legal briefing. What began as silence was now turning into strategy. But what came next? No one, not even Meghan, could have predicted how far the palace was willing to go. What happens when the monarchy decides to go to war? Not with swords, but with subpoenas. Inside Clarence's house, the tone had shifted. The tea had gone cold. The chatter in corridors was hushed, anxious. Staffers who once rolled their eyes at the Meghan-Harry debacle were now walking on eggshells. Because this wasn't gossip anymore. It was legal. 3 lawyers. 1 private meeting. A file labeled MM/Sovereign Concern placed directly on a polished mahogany table. No cameras. No leaks. Just raw tension. Inside that folder, a series of documented instances where Meghan allegedly used royal branding to promote personal projects and fundraising events after stepping down. Some entries were subtle. A business card. A digital event description. Others were brazen. Legal claims made under the assumption of still being a working royal. Enough to raise a question the palace had desperately avoided until now. Was Meghan knowingly misrepresenting her royal status for financial gain? King Charles didn't speak much during the meeting. According to one insider, he sat with his hands clasped, his eyes fixed on the table as legal counsel went over options. Civil action, a cease and desist, stripping of remaining courtesy titles. Even criminal referral if fraud could be proven in the UK. And then, someone said it. She could face jail time. At first, it sounded ridiculous. This was Meghan Markle, former actress, current duchess. A global celebrity. Royal jail time? Impossible. Or was it? Because under British law, if someone misuses a royal title to gain money, influence, or favors, especially in charitable or public-facing endeavors, it can be a prosecutable offense. And more so if it involves crossing into misrepresentation of the crown. One senior advisor even referenced the Titles Deprivation Act of 1917, a law originally written to strip traitorous royals of their honors. The law still exists, and while it's rarely invoked, it was suddenly back on the table. Can you imagine? A royal decree removing Meghan's remaining honors, all publicly documented. But even more shocking than the laws being discussed was the emotional weight hanging over the room. Because this wasn't just about Meghan. It was about Harry. And Charles knew, deep down, that going after her meant going against his own son. Was he ready for that? Could he risk tearing the family apart further just to protect the monarchy? That question lingered in the silence, until one advisor leaned in and said something no one saw coming. You may not have a choice, Your Majesty. And just as the decision loomed, a folder was passed to the king. A leak. A piece of evidence that would turn this internal fire into a full-blown inferno. It was a single document. Thin, unassuming, tucked between legal memos and procedural notes. But when King Charles opened it, everything changed. Because inside that file wasn't just another list of alleged title infractions. It was a leaked email thread. And this time, it wasn't speculation, press spin, or anonymous claims. It was direct communication from Meghan herself. The sender? Meghan's PR agency. The recipient? A prominent non-profit event coordinator in London. The subject line? Securing Duchess appearance. HRH branding required. That one line was enough to drain the blood from the king's face. You see, not only did Meghan allegedly insist on being referred to as Her Royal Highness, but the email showed her team actively requesting branded materials, invitations, signage, even press releases that would place her as a current working royal. Let that sink in. This wasn't accidental. This wasn't a mistake. This, on paper, looked intentional. And the most damning part? In one follow-up message, a staffer reportedly flagged concerns over the legality of using HRH. The response from Meghan's team? Don't worry, we're covered. The palace won't move against us. Those words echoed like thunder inside Clarence's house. Because now it wasn't just about branding. It was about arrogance. A calculated gamble that the monarchy would remain silent. Afraid to look vengeful, afraid to open old wounds. And for a while, they had. But now King Charles had everything he needed. Not just suspicion, not just public pressure, but documented evidence that his trust had been broken again. Can you blame him for what came next? In the following days, calls were made to external legal counsel, not the usual royal solicitors. This time, the king brought in top-tier professionals with experience in international defamation, branding misuse, and charity law violations. They weren't hired to advise. They were hired to act. Because here's the twist. Multiple fundraising efforts involving Meghan, some linked to US-based organizations, had roots in UK partnerships. That meant British legal jurisdiction could apply. And if Meghan knowingly misused her former title while accepting money on British soil, that could mean real criminal exposure, fraud, misrepresentation, possibly conspiracy if others were involved. This wasn't just a royal scandal anymore. This was a legal crisis, and the crown was done playing defense. And yet, as Charles authorized the next step, a quiet move to alert the Crown Prosecution Service, a new message arrived from Montecito, and what it said would flip the entire narrative upside down. The message came encrypted, sent directly from Meghan's legal team to Buckingham Palace, bypassing press, bypassing royal aides, bypassing everyone. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't an explanation. It was a warning. Cease further legal action or confidential materials will be released. That was the exact phrasing. No signature, no subject, just a cold, surgical threat. And that was the final straw. Because for King Charles, this wasn't just a royal nuisance anymore. It was bordering on extortion. Remember the Queen's motto? Never complain, never explain. Charles had tried. He had stayed silent, even as his son and daughter-in-law dismantled the royal image piece by piece on global platforms. He had waited. He had hoped. Even after the Oprah interview. Even after the Netflix documentary. Even after the alleged secret recordings at the Platinum Jubilee. But now Meghan was allegedly threatening to release private royal materials if they pursued justice. That wasn't just betrayal. That was warfare. And King Charles, the monarch known for diplomacy and second chances, finally drew his line. Within hours of receiving the message, the palace issued a confidential directive to proceed. The royal legal team was given the green light. The file labeled MM/Sovereign Concern was handed to the Crown Prosecution Service. Quietly, formally, legally, the case is now in motion. Documents are being reviewed. Witnesses may be called. And behind closed doors, legal options are being drafted, including one that could see Meghan facing a potential fraud investigation under UK law. And while the headlines may still be catching up, the war behind the scenes is real. This isn't just family drama anymore. This is legacy, reputation, rule of law. And here's what makes it even more painful. King Charles knows that if this goes public, Harry will be shattered. Because in pursuing justice, he may end up prosecuting the mother of his grandchildren and fully severing the last fragile thread holding his family together. Was it worth it? Was protecting the crown more important than protecting his own son? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain. This wasn't a rash decision. It wasn't made in anger. It was made in silence. In a locked room, with tears no one saw and consequences no one can stop. And yet, we haven't even reached the final twist. Because now insiders claim that one of Meghan's closest allies may be cooperating with palace investigators. A leak is coming. A name. A witness. And when that hits the press, everything Meghan built, every defense, every carefully crafted narrative, could come crashing down. So we ask you, right here, right now, should King Charles continue? Should Meghan Markle finally face the consequences? Or is this a dangerous path the monarchy will regret forever? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, because in the next episode, we'll uncover the shocking identity of the royal insider who flipped. What's coming next? You won't believe it.